Okay, so this is part 2, basically, of our little interview here. And we are on question 11. So, what would you say is the most common misnomers of positive reinforcement, and how would you address them?
Okay, well, there's a few things I think that, one, we've all heard don't hand feed horses. I mean, that's kind of been one of the first things people say. And really, I've helped to resolve biting and food aggressive issues utilizing hand feeding. So it's not the food that's the problem. What the challenge in it is what we're feeding. So it's not the food itself, but it's the lack of understanding about what we're feeding. So when we feed a behavior, whatever behavior happened right before it, that behavior gets reinforced. So I think teaching, understanding, getting people to understand how that works and the correlation between them is really big. So a lot of people just say it's going to cause mouthy, bitey, spoiled horses. It's not. That's not the part. It's when we do positive reinforcement incorrectly. And oftentimes people think it's all about the food, and it's not really all about the food. If it's all about the food, then we've done something wrong. We should be engaging them in the game and having them enjoying playing the game. So I think we can use food incorrectly. Positive reinforcement can be done poorly, just like any other type of training. So I think that's a significant portion to it. And I think that it is, so I think that's a big one, just understanding that. And a lot of times what I would do is I will meet people, and still we meet them, and people will be like, no, I'm not going to hand feed, I don't hand feed, I'm not using positive reinforcement. And all that tells me is that they don't understand about the training, and they don't understand the science, they don't understand what it really is. They haven't learned a systematic way to do it, and I think this happens more and more as positive reinforcement as a movement gets bigger, we get more people doing it incorrectly, so then people see it done incorrectly, and they say, no, I'm not doing that. See, it creates these things. So I think that's a big part. Another big fallacy or misunderstanding, I think, about the positive reinforcement is people think it's for tricks, and it's not for serious things, it's not for written work, and that's all not true, because, I mean, really, everything they do to horses, for horses, really is a trick. You know, there's the carry the rider trick, get the trailer trick, stand for the veterinarian trick, but it's not just for these ancillary behaviors. It is for things like written work or husbandry work or things that are very serious, but particularly there seems to be this cutoff with people thinking about the horses and the riding and thinking, yeah, but how would you do it under saddle? And it's really just the same. We're just training from a different place. So I think those are probably two of the most common misnomers out there.
What is your best advice you can give to the one who is the only person in their barn doing positive reinforcement, especially when they're receiving scrutiny and negative opinions about the training?
Well, it's hard. I think the best thing I want to say is hang on, because it's come so far and it is exponentially growing. So there are more people out there. Look, we go do clinics and there's 25 people there, and they're all from, well, sometimes they come far and wide, but mostly they're learning that somebody just down the street is doing it. So they're not as alone as it used to be. There's other people out there trying to create that community. But I think the number one thing is stick to what's inside you, and what feels good to you. And then there's another part I think that's really important, and that's trying to engage your trainer. If you go to a traditional trainer, find a traditional trainer that works with you. They don't have to be positive reinforcement necessarily, but get somebody who is going to be open to at least working with you on some of these elements. And then it really, I have to say, it's up to the person to tactfully approach it and say it and engage the trainer. So pick somebody who's kind of, going to see your side. And remember, you're the paying trainer, so it's yours too. You're the one, not the paying trainer, you're paying the trainer. So you are there, you're paying them to do that. So a lot of times they will work with you. But if you can, and help engage your trainer by, one, listening to what they have to say, but asking them if they can work with you. A lot of times, if you start a sentence by asking for their help, and saying, "Can you help me with something?" and then laying out a specific thing, so picking what a thing that may be something you're working on, and then asking if they can help you with that, but present it. Can I get your help with something? And people tend to go, yeah, what can I help you with? And then present, say, you work on this for 30 days or maybe 60 days, depending on what it is, if they'll indulge you with this. And then a lot of times too, if you hand the clicker to them and say, hey, would you click that piece? Because I don't know exactly when it is. I think sometimes if you can get them to see the progress that can happen in that period, the result can be somebody who goes, yeah, okay, that actually kind of worked. So they can begin to understand it a little more and see it in action, and you're including them in the process. So it's hard for people to take on something new. So if you can include them in the process, you give them some power in the process, I think a lot of times that really helps. And then the one other thing that I have done when I have had a client that I think, this client is not necessarily, at some point I feel like they're going to want to go back to more traditional means. I'll have them write out what they want for their horse and what, what they want their relationship to look like. And that's all really lovely, what they write out. So then if we get to this crossroads and they're saying, I want to go this way because it's faster or whatever it might be. But if you can say, but what do you think that can do? What do you think that'll do for that relationship built on trust? It's their words, and a lot of times that can help take them back to a place of kind of having to stop and think through that. But you can also do it with a trainer, saying, okay, in the beginning, let's these are the things I would like for my horse, and write them down. And as you talk about your relationship and the things you want, and then as you come to places, junctures where you're at a fork in the road, how do you pick a piece that is, you can say, you can go back to that and say, I don't know, what will this do for the relationship? See if they can't help you to find, that balance of what you're trying to create. So I think it really all starts in, one, finding the right person that's going to be receptive enough, and then two, and I know it's hard, sometimes people are in the middle of Timbuktu and there's one trainer who does dressage or whatever it might be. But I think if you can kind of find somebody that's open enough, and then it's kind of in presenting it a way that can maybe be heard just a little and get a little fissure in there. So, and pick your battles. Sometimes there's things you're like, okay, we'll just go with that, no big deal. But there's other things you're thinking, but I don't really want to do that. So let some of those things go and work on the things that are more along your own.
It's a good idea to talk to them about how they would like to see their relationship go. I've never heard you say that.
Yeah, good.
Talk about the early process at John and Beezy Madden's place, since you hadn't yet put the training into practice with horses. How did you decide to first ask the horse to turn his head away, and the Madden's feelings on the discoveries you were all making together?
Okay, that was, what I look at it as, it was kind of my lap time. It was time to figure out how much positive reinforcement, working with the traditional time, how did it work with the horses, what was needed at that level, because at that point I'm working just with high level people in different disciplines even, as we kind of branched out a bit. But it was, so it really was my lap times, a lot of discovery, a lot of figuring things out. So that very first week when I went to work with John and Beezy to see if we all wanted to work together, because John said, come here, start a business, and then Vinton and I went and looked into it, and we were working with the horses for the first time, doing the bridge conditioning target training, because I was busy learning how it was done traditionally. And so that was, so many epiphanies were starting to happen then, and really, I really thought of it at that point just a means to an end. And since horses, I've learned like 50 times more than what I learned with the marine mammals. I learned good practice, good science, good, technique, good getting the high criteria, but then started to realize how much more depth it brought to the relationship. But starting with turning the head away, I remember working with a horse in the stall, and John and Beezy and Vinton were outside the stall watching, but the horse was so close to me, I mean, I couldn't even make eye contact. He had been a stallion for a long time, so he was, like 7 years or something. And he had been gelded within the past year, but he was so close to me, it was intimidating. And I didn't feel like I was in a danger spot or anything. I didn't think he was going to hurt me, but I thought, well, I'm really, you're invading my space. And I didn't know what to do with it. And then he looked out the door for a minute, and I thought, phew, that feels better. And so then I thought, okay, everybody needs to keep their head away. And with the marine mammals, really that wasn't a thing you had. You might have a sea lion or two that was a little nosy in a bucket if you had one, but it really wasn't a thing you had that you dealt with there. So then that became an immediate way to deal with that and learn that, okay, that's a great thing to do, and it's the teaching the counter of being mouthy. They can't be mouthy, nosy, pushy, and keeping their head away. So making that more powerful became a way that we could keep on eye contact. We could work together and have a little space between us. So that was, and that was just trial and error. You have to get out there and do things and think, here's my challenge. What could be a solution? So it was a fun time, but nobody was doing it. There was no path to follow. It was forging a brand new path moving in this direction. So it was really exciting, and I was always optimistic about it. I never felt like, oh God, so I was like, it's gonna work. Just gotta figure it out. And I think with John and Beezy, it was one of the things was that very first week. At the end of the week, all I had done was 3 5-minute sessions a day with a clicker, then 3 5-minute sessions a day with a target, and that was it. With those horses, they did their normal in, out, ridden, groomed, turned out, all the things they normally did. I just caught them when they were in their stall. And at the end of the week, Beezy had said, each of those horses you're working with is remarkably better in the arena. Not some, all of them. Remarkably better, not a little better. And that was the beginning of a huge thing, to realize that it was the training hadn't interwoven yet. We planned to down the road, but at this point it was just how do all of us people work together. And that was a pretty big deal to recognize that. And I think early on, Beezy could see that one of her favorite things was it was a way to tell horses, yes, you've done something right. And she said, all we have been able to do is correct what's wrong.
Right.
And now we could say, yes, this is right, and put something in it for them that they value. And that's a game changer, it really was. And then one of the things that John was really significantly, looking at was that it builds heart in a horse. It changes their perspective. It changes your relationship. It helps them to really want to work with you. But again, putting something in it for them is really valuable. What's in it for a horse to do a flying lead change? Not a lot, but you put something in it for them, and it changes that relationship. And keep in mind, Beezy is so good that, the horses there were really relatively happy horses. If you look at the whole horse world, they were happy horses because she didn't go for horses who didn't like what they were doing and think I'm going to make them do it because they have the talent. She chose horses that were talented and already liked what they were doing and just brought them the rest of the way. So it was to even see big changes with those horses, knowing that horses that maybe didn't have it so great, it would really begin to start changing things. So it was pretty exciting time.
If a horse has learned a behavior in a stressful situation and then has practiced that undesirable behavior, it is harder to change the neural pathways associated with it since it becomes more deeply entrenched. When they learn a new behavior with positive reinforcement, there's a tendency for that behavior to have healthy pathways that lead to successful choices. Can you talk about what neural pathways are and creating healthy neural pathways? Talk about what neural pathways are and creating healthy neural pathways can be a game changer when it comes to training.
Yeah, and this is, really right now with the science, what's coming along, because this is all science-based, so what's coming up behind it is neurobiology now is learning more and more about the brain. So we're learning more about the way the brain works and being able to prove it. And so one of the things that is a part of it is, of course, neural pathways. And neural pathways, every new experience creates new neural pathways. So how deep they are is how much they are practiced. The more it's practiced, the deeper the neural pathway. So when they have practiced something, it is kind of, I look at it like like land, you know, and it's a valley, and the water's going to go through the deepest rivulet, you know, to get out the deepest way, and that's the neural pathway. You know, when they start to do something, they're always going to choose the thing that has the strongest reinforcement history, whether it's getting something they want or avoiding something they don't want, and that is a deep neural pathway. So when we want to change something, and it's all about the reinforcement history, you know, it means this has worked from there, and it's worked for them for a long time, so it just gets more and more and more and more, you know, formed. So when we come along and say we want to change something, we have to know we're going to try to form a new neural pathway. And so now, you can think of it like scales too. It's kind of the same, it all works to the same thing. It's all based on the reinforcement history. They're going to make choices, always making choices, and they're going to choose the thing with the deepest neural pathway. And it will go there naturally. So as we build more and more and more and more reinforcement history with a new neural pathway, we start to change the direction that they go. We start to change their choices. And so, as deeply entrenched as it might be, if we use positive reinforcement, we can really, sometimes it builds really, really fast, much deeper than the other. Sometimes it takes more time. So the neural pathway is changing it and just creating new choices. And we definitely can do it. We can take it from a conditioned response, you know, where it's not even a thought anymore, but it just happens, and we can still change it even when it's entrenched, or even in the case of, you know, sweet Addie, that it had become an aggressive tendency, and we can still, preventative, you know, she was just taking care of herself. We can change that, and things that come out of the blue and we don't understand, we can change all of that to be in a better place, to have endorphins and dopamines associated with it as opposed to cortisol. So we can really change what happens and change their perspective. And I think that's really a different piece too. Horses tend to be nemophobic, so as they go around looking at things going, danger, danger, danger. As we use a positive reinforcement, we start to have them go, what is that? You know, and be more curious and changing their overall view, which means we're changing neural pathways right and left.
With traditional training, they will tend to only maintain criteria taught to them through pressure and release. But with positive reinforcement, they will be more likely to up their own criteria. What is the best way to help them to want to continue to up their own criteria? And how do we avoid the pitfalls of horses becoming bored with the training?
Yeah, and this is, you know, as much as this is art, it's also science. You know, and you gotta, and so this is where I mean, as much as it is science, it is also art. Whatever, you know. So as much as it's sciencey, it's all based in science. I made none of this up. It's all in textbooks. But it's in textbooks, so this is where you can read all about it from clinical studies. But the real life is just a little different, you know, because they all bring different, you know, experiences to it. So this is where the art comes in. And this is where we have to spend time in the barn. We have to spend time with the horses. We have to get out there and do it and start to figure out the individuals. They're all individuals, and we have to adapt to that individual. So figuring out, is this a horse that needs more repetition? Is this a horse who is needing to have more support? Is it a horse that's going to get bored easy? So I think a lot of times with horses like a young horse, a baby horse, but there's just the busy horses that get bored really easily. Or not bored, but you know, they're like, yeah, got it. So this is the art, figuring out how do we keep maximizing their attention and their experience. And one of the ways that I think is so important is to constantly be raising the criteria all the time. I'm always raising criteria. Now, it doesn't mean and this is the art. I don't want to go so fast that they don't succeed. If I go so fast that they don't succeed, that feels futile. They're like, I can't get this. I never get the right answer. And a lot of horses that are shut down, that's where they start from. And they say, I just do what I'm told. And if I don't know exactly what I'm told, I don't want to get corrected.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people tend to have horses like that, look at them as though they're horses that don't necessarily like positive reinforcement. I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
My horse doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And I think that is a shutdown horse.
I think so too. And so then you try to engage them and they're like, no, I just want to know exactly what to do. And some people may think that's a good thing, but I think I know that a free thinking horse, a partner, if I want a horse with heart, we need a partnership. And And if we have a partnership, it means we're both involved. It means I'm listening to them. I get what they like. I understand their boundaries. I get that jacket on the fence is scary, so we're gonna deal with it together in a slower way. And I'm respecting what they're saying and listening to what they're saying. And they're also there. We both show up suited up and ready to play. And I think that's what I want. I want a horse who can problem solve with me. We come to something, we're like, oh, we got to figure this out. You know, it could be on course, you know what I mean? And you're like, but I want them there problem solving with me. I want them alert and with me and able to be resilient and get through that. So finding that place where we can engage the horse and get the horse to think and get the horse to enjoy the problem solving is really, really important. And that means raising the criteria all the time, not so fast that they don't, but we also want to raise it where it's success, 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 success. So what they walk away with is going, I'm really good at problem solving. And you have to start small enough that the shutdown horse can deal with it. A shutdown horse, you can have the target right in front of them. And you're like, can you touch target? And they're like, I don't see it. Or they'll even go up and hover it. And you're like, oh. So even if they just look at it, that's where we start. Say, that's it, just look at it. Until we, over time, get them to really engage in the problem solving. So I'm raising the criteria all the time, not so fast that they don't get it, but it's getting stuck in one place is also, one, not productive. You're not getting somewhere, and you're not keeping them engaged in the game. And again, you know, there's a study done where they gave animals free food, and they taught them to hit a lever for food. Then they gave them both options back, and the horses tend to go for the lever for food, meaning they like playing the game. From that came a term called contra freeloading, so they enjoy playing the game. So what we want to do is engage them in the game. If you gave me the same crossword puzzle every day, and I love crossword puzzles, I just be you know, it wouldn't be fun for me. But if there's a challenge in there and I can get through the challenge, I don't even have to finish them all the time, and I still can enjoy the game. So I think that we really need to, and that's the art part, figure out what that individual needs. But we do it, people teaching riding lessons tend to figure out this person needs a little more pushing and this one needs a little more, you know, hand holding or whatever it might be, and we try to figure out how do I help you learn the best. It's not any different with the horses, you know, so that's the art part. And I wish there's a recipe book. I could just say this, but it's not. We have to go out there and kind of teach people to recognize that body language and those things that make that individual more transparent to us and more clear who they are.
And this one kind of piggybacks off of that. Talk about the art versus science, and I think you already did. And why it's important not to get too hung up on trying to get it just right.
Yeah. Oh, golly, yes. And this is what we see a lot. And trying to get it just right, you know what my number one goal is with every session is to have fun. I want to have fun, and I want the horses to have fun. But it doesn't mean we're not getting serious stuff done. So I think if we get nitpicky and start saying, but eat this and this and this, it's not fun for me if somebody comes out and stands over me and tells me exactly what to do at every step. I mean, if it's a brand new thing, maybe I need that for a little bit, but really it feels better when you're trusted, that people trust you and you feel like you're doing a good job. And I think just nitpicking and it becomes really, it just feels stifling for me. And I think it feels stifling for the horses. The most frustrated horses I've ever seen was at a low level dressage show. So watching the people, they're new, and this is I'm not trying to put anybody down, but they're new, but yet they're not very good in understanding it. So they're trying to fiddle and make little nuances happen, but they're not very clear with their aids. The horse is kind of going, I don't know, and there was so much swishing. So it was kind of that tail swishing, and just you could see the tension. And I think that when we get like that, it's not creating freedom, it's not creating trust, it's not creating fun. And I think it starts to feel like I can't succeed, you know. So I think the horses need to feel like they can succeed, and I think it's important to take breaks and have some fun and still get there. If the horse is having fun, and that's the thing with SeaWorld, they got all their food each and every day. Our goal, we had nothing on them. So it was really important that we made sure that it was fun, and that's how it got done. and it could still be serious. So if we show up and the horse goes, yay, we're going to do our fun stuff today, we can go leaps and bounds. But if we show up and they're like, oh golly, now I'm just going to be nitpicked to death. But one of the things that's nice about the clicker is you can also, or a bridge signal, whatever you're going to use, you have a way to say that little step over, that little swing of the hips, that little, that. So we have a way to break that down where we don't have to keep fussing with a lack of clarity, which brings tension. But still in the big picture, we want to be feeling fun and happy. They know, there was that study where they showed pictures of horses or faces and people that they knew smiling and not smiling, and they picked the horses gravitated towards the smiling. And then they also did it when the last time they saw the person and what their emotions were. So I mean, it's really, they do know what we're doing and our intention. So if we get too focused in on little pieces, I think it doesn't. It does. It really steals the joy from it. Absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
I feel like one of the most important things I hear you say is to focus on what you want to see more of and not what you don't want to see. With that being said, what is the best advice you would give to someone who has a long history of using negative reinforcement like I did to help them to be able to stay focused on the good parts when it's so easy to fall back into the traditional training mindset and then we become stuck?
Yeah, I think it's a really important principle, I think, because you really do need to keep focusing on what you want to see more of, which is a more optimistic thing, and it also helps you to celebrate things a little bit more. If I keep saying, Jessie, don't do this, and Jessie, don't do that, you're just like, okay, I just can't do anything right. Again, it kind of goes back to the same taking the joy out. But if I can focus on what's good and what I want to see more of, I'm thinking, okay, I need more relaxation, or I need more brilliance, whatever it might be. It's easier to celebrate those little pieces, and it's a forward-thinking mindset, and we can take the smaller steps towards it. And I think it's a perspective change. So I don't know exactly what advice I would give. I would just keep saying celebrate the small pieces, and there's always tomorrow, so it doesn't have to be this whole perfect picture. With positive reinforcement, it is nice because we can go in these small steps, these successive approximations, which helps the building blocks. So sometimes just thinking, if I can just get that hip over today, that would be a great thing, even though maybe I am working on lead change, but if I can just get that piece today and tell them this was great, make this solid, then that's going to build to the next thing. So I think always looking forward, but also reminding yourself where you've been. I think this happens a lot with young horses. It's easy to look at where, like, all the stuff that's still to be done, when sometimes you have to go, a month ago, I couldn't even do that. So really celebrating those little things and realizing that the smaller, more solid the step is, the more solid the next step will be. So now you have a building block to build on. So I think just focusing on that principle would help people in general.
And I want to reiterate what you said there about the relaxation part too. Understanding that with positive reinforcement, you can encourage and help build relaxation. Whereas with another form of training, that just isn't very possible.
And can go to tension so quick.
Yeah.
Because I want energy. I actually love energy. I love an energetic horse. I love a big personality. So I want relaxed energy, though. So I want them jumping the jump and bouncing right in and go, yay, and doing it. But the relaxation and creating them doing it with the relaxed clarity, I think is really, that's the joy for me. That's what I saw as when I first saw Grand Prix. I said, oh, that looks really fun for two horses. The others, not so much.
There seems to be this confusion around positive reinforcement under saddle, or using it under saddle. And some people hear that and think it's an inconvenience to carry food and to feed it while riding. Can you talk about that a little bit? Do I have to stop and feed every behavior I bridge? Doesn't that getting annoying to have to do that? And how soon could food be faded out so I'm not having to stop and feed so often?
Yeah, and this is a common thing I see. As people, okay, so they're working on, the canter part, or moving forward, or whatever it might be. And so they finally get a little piece, and you say, click that. That was a good decision. That's good early stuff. Bridge, 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 click, click, which does mean once we click, they stop and check in for the food. So it is a stop following it. It's not, the stop isn't, you're not feeding the stop, you're feeding what you clicked for when you properly train the clicker. That's why that's so important. But the part I see people kind of forgetting is we're to keep raising the criteria. So it means we're going to start building duration on this. So we don't just have to click every canner depart. We start saying, nice canner depart, don't need to click now. You got that solid 100%. Now let's take another couple strides. Now let's take 5 strides. Now let's take 10 strides. And you build it to a chain of behaviors. So you don't stay on that one behavior. You build the duration. You build this chain of behaviors. So people, and I would also like to remind people that you need to reinforce a behavior in order for it to recur in the future. If you want to increase the likelihood of seeing going forward, you have to stop and say, yes, I like that. It's worth something to me, worth something that you value. I'm going to give you something that you value. So it's great to stop and break those pieces down, but we start thinking about the longevity and the duration of it. But as I'm building duration, once in a while I go back and click the canter depart again. You know, even though we may have been, you know, we go up and around the ring and downward transition to the other lead and then a circle and then, you know, whatever pieces we continue to add on. And I would like to also encourage people, I think this happens more with traditional trainers when they're new to the positive reinforcement, they want to move too fast. And sometimes we need to stay there a little bit to change the neural pathways, to make this a strong reinforcement history in the positive, in the meaning something given that they value versus they're avoiding something that they don't want. So I think so that they instead of just thinking pressure, which can be related to cortisol in a stressy situation, we want them to think about the endorphins and dopamine. So take the time to rebuild a new and improved positive reinforcement history with a behavior will make it more solid, more resilient, more relaxed, more just like you like it. So I think those pieces are important. And then the other thing about when do you get rid of the food, as you build duration, you start to be able to not necessarily have to feed that behavior. So I tend to always have some on me. It doesn't mean, you know, I'm feeding the same things. I've shifted to other things and moved on to other things. So I don't stop teaching or improving things. So I will always have some on me, but as I keep raising criteria, it's not necessary. Like people could ride Mint who had never fed and didn't have any food on him. He'd be great. He just was like, yeah, I'll do it all. I love canner depart. Why wouldn't I do a canner? Because it was all classically conditioned by that point. So I think it's important that we kind of get to that classic conditioning. So use the food, fast and furious. Use a lot of it and get to the point where they're like, it just makes me feel great to do these things. And then fade it from those individual behaviors. And somebody asked Vinton one time directly, and it was at a clinic, and they said, Vinton, when do you get rid of the food and the clicker? And he said, you know what? I grew up, you know, I learned to ride grabbing my spurs and my bit and my stick, and that was all okay. But the difference it makes in the horses, why wouldn't I grab a few cookies? And I thought that was really profound and actually really a good way to put it, you know, and that's coming from somebody who's been so traditional. So I think considering what it does for your horse, considering what it does for the relationship with your horse, I don't see why you'd want to just completely get rid of it. You could just have a couple that come randomly at different pieces. So that's my thought on it, though.
Having been mostly doing traditional training until now, too, I think something important to point out is once you've created a problem solver, how quickly those steps go.
Yeah. Yes. And that's something I say a lot is slow down, you'll go faster. Because sometimes you have to stop. You got to slow down. You got to condition the bridge signal. You work on a little targeting. You kind of get to them. You start building that foundation. But once they are a problem solver, you bring something forward. They're like, there's an answer in here somewhere. And now they're in a relaxed, good way, thinking, what could it be? Is this? Is this? Is it this? And they're trying things, which makes it so clear. And then when they get it, you go, yes, that's the piece. And it makes it so much faster in the long run. Yeah. But it does take a little bit to build that foundation. It doesn't take a lot. No. I mean, if you can do 5 minutes a day, a few times a day, with a particular horse that you're working on, and even if you spread it out over weeks, they remember. So I think it really does, in the long run, it goes faster, faster, faster. Even though in the beginning it can feel like, what does this have to do with anything? Believe me, they're powerful tools that will will make it so much better for both of you and your relationship.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people look at it as daunting to think, oh, I'm going to try to start feeding the horse. I'm already having trouble riding the horse.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And it's hard also to learn something new and take on something new when you're in the middle of being an expert in your field, or entrenched in how you've done it for all these years. And I think that is kind of becomes a little bit of a roadblock for some people too, because they have such a strong personal reinforcement history with traditional training, and they don't know enough about positive reinforcement to trust it at first. So when I start something, I was a marine mammal trainer, so I'd be like, yeah, we're going to get through this and it's going to work, and I knew it. So I think sometimes it takes a little bit to get through a thing or two to kind of go, yeah, we'll get there, and to trust it. So I think there's that component, and not fall very quickly back to doing it the way that you always did it. Not there's something wrong with the way it's always been done, but sometimes it's what caused the issue you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Those methods. So sometimes you got to go, I got to try something new, or I'd like to change my relationship, which means a different way of kind of using different tools.
A lot of people feel that since horses are animals, they shouldn't necessarily be given a say in what we do with them. But choice is a powerful motivator. Can you talk about why giving choice works so well when we are training horses?
Yeah, choice is it builds trust, if you ask me, because the horse is showing me if they trust me, and I have to trust them. So you give choice first in little things. You just say, can you turn your head away? It's a little choice, but it's a choice. And then as they do, they make the choice, and you reinforce that choice. And pretty soon they're like, I can do this or not do it. Well, I'll do it. And then you go to the target. So those pieces and having that choice is really it's empowering for the horses. It's empowering for the animals. And I think that is really, really valuable for creating them to trust you more and for them to feel heard. And I know that there are a lot of people that think they should just do what they're doing when they're told. Well, yeah, that we want to get to that place where they will listen, because we have brought to them when we say, let's do this, like that's all worked out great. But the stronger they are with their choice and showing that they want to do it, they understand it, there's something in it for them. It gives us information when they're working and showing us they're choosing it. It gives us information, because if they're not choosing it, which sometimes, let's say, right off the bat, sometimes they go, oh, then no, and so that can be really scary, but it really is a good thing, because then if they have the comfort to show us how they feel, it means there's a certain amount of comfort in it, and we can build that up and start to increase, we can get information from it, and we can increase their trust. But pretty soon they're going to want to do what we do. So giving them a little bit of choice, does create more endorphins, more dopamine, more free thinking, more teaching them to be problem solvers. If we're going to teach them to be problem solvers, if we want them to be there with us as a partner, they have to feel like they're choosing this. And that is really, really powerful. So being able to work them at liberty and giving them choice is a really powerful thing. Now, like I think, and what we like to do is start them at liberty first, if we can, for things. I mean, and a lot of horses already started, and that's where they are, and that's fine. But if we can start them at liberty and teach them things, and they show they know it, they like it, they have it up to criteria, we have these pieces, then we put the equipment on, and it's really no big deal. They already get it. Now we have soft, responsive, listening horses. So I think the choice is really, really empowering for the horses. And again, some behaviors argue that it is a primary reinforcer. But I think, and like there's the time with Santino when he was going in the trailer, and he had learned to get in the trailer, and then he went for a short little drive for the first time in his own ring, getting out the same place. But that was a lot for him. And that, some horses, that just is. That's just how it goes. Well, then we're kind of working, then going, okay, let's get back on track. And he went partway, he was not committing. He'd get his 2 feet in and be like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And the one time he had the 2 feet in, he got out, he ran, he bucked and ran around and played the ring. He was running by. And as he was going by, I think I said Santino, and you could see him stop and look. And as he looked, I clicked, and then he just stomped all the way in the trailer. but him knowing that he could go out helped him to get in. And I think that when they recognize that they have a choice and they're going to be heard, because sometimes when we're riding, we're going to say you can't cross the street with traffic or whatever, but when they can feel heard, it is really a powerful building relationship, building trust, and saying I'm trusting you. And I think I cannot stress it enough how powerful it is, and how in the long run it turns around and it builds your trust as well.
Yeah, and just thinking about humans. Someone said every day you're going to eat broccoli.
At 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then go to the bathroom at 2 o'clock. Whatever.
That would not be very fun.
No, it really would not. And just saying, getting in and micromanaging you through something and making you do it versus saying, it goes back to that even. Somebody saying, hey, can you get that done? You do it however you want. Well, let's get it done. It just is so much more empowering. And it builds a lot in a person. And it builds a lot in a horse. It builds their confidence. It builds their... And also, I'm going to also say in this piece, you also get to see a lot about how they're thinking.
Yeah.
You get to see.
Helps them learn to be explorers too.
Yes, to be curious, to be explorers, to be problem solvers, to be optimistic. Their perspective changes. Instead of it all being fearful, they think, how can I get through that? And then it really does a lot to build, the trust with us too, and us looking at them and knowing they tend to, be afraid of this or back off on this or do this or go headlong into something. It just tells us a lot about their personality, which helps us be able to be better partners for them and to be better teachers for our learners.
Last one. You talk about how we can best serve the positive reinforcement community best to create the biggest impact. I'm speaking particularly of being non-judgmental to those who are considering giving it a try. Can you talk about your feelings on making everyone feel welcomed and accepted?
Yes, this does go back to that UN of clicker training, but I think it is so important. If we want this community to grow, we have to be accepting. I mean, in your heart, not judgmental. Because just like with the horses, if I go in there and go, yeah, let's go have fun, but I have this agenda underneath it all, or I have this ridicule and judgment underneath it all, they can see that, they can feel it, and it's the same with the people. So really, I think it's important that we give people choice and the freedom to do things and dip their toe in the pond and say, is this for me? Can I try this little thing? And there might be 1,000 things as somebody teaching positive reinforcement that I think, oh, I might do that different, and I might do that different, and I might do that different, but you let it go. And you just say, let's just focus on this piece, and let's have fun and joy in this piece. Let's get some success in this piece, and let people find their way through it. There's a time when there's a woman that had a rope halter, and I explained, rope halters, they're narrow, and they have the knots on, sensitive areas of the face, and they're really can be quite painful for horses. So that's why they're so effective. And so I just explained that. And I said, you make a choice, and she's making her choice. And I didn't say anything about her having to stop. I just educated her about what it was about. But I also knew that she didn't feel comfortable leading her horse. So I knew she kind of needed it as a little bit of, safety for her and a perceived safety. And my thought is, why not train him to lead? But anyway, so I just was like, okay, but that's what it is. And she came back a month later and said, because you gave me the freedom to keep it, I got rid of it sooner. Is that any different for our horses? No, it's the same for people. It's the same with our horses. We don't expect our horses to know the whole kit and caboodle the day we come out. We say, just try this little piece. And I think it's hard for new people to realize that 28 years ago, nobody but John and BZ were accepting of this, ready to try this. So as we kind of get out to the world and talking to new people, you just have to keep sowing seeds and planting seeds and let them do what they want. Nobody is going to, well, most people, yes, almost nobody, I'm sure somebody, but it is going to just, if you kind of go confrontational, it's going to go, oh, okay. Mostly they're going to be like, they're going to dig their heels in harder. That's going to be, it's not positive. It's not positive reinforcement. It's not treating the humans like you do the horses. And I think just letting people take their own journey, you know, and we just educate and let them go wherever they want and help them when they're ready, and let that go. But it really has to be in their heart, your heart, you know, as you go there, to really be like, it's okay. And I think the thing that helps me with that is hanging on to the empathy and the compassion.
Yeah.
You know, that most everybody at some point started there. I mean, I came from the marine mammals, so I'm a little bit of a freak of that nature, but mostly everybody that is there trying to do this with horses started with one little piece. They were traditional trainers, and so and they didn't have a bad heart for their horses. They love their horses. They're trying to do the best they can for their horses. And so to remember that nobody is out there to be doing anything harmful. They're doing the best they can in what they've been taught. So just if we can just educate and let them make their choices, I find it's way more successful, way more fruitful, way less stress for me, you know, and we can, and sometimes, I will talk to somebody and I think, ooh, they just do not want to hear this right now. I just let it go. I just say, okay, let's talk about the weather, you know, just recognizing that they're not ready, and it's okay. In due time, I think most people will come to understand it more, but if they're not ready, it's okay. So I just really encourage people to kind of have an empathetic stance about where they once were in starting, and to be recognized and just going to take their journey. I'm not gonna have Olympian just go, okay, I just dump everything I know.
Yeah.
You
Even
know,
though I'm in the Olympics.
yes, exactly. And I have a huge, you know, success story. You just have to say, you know, can we try a little bit? And I'm going to also say that sometimes people are just mixing it. You know, I kind of called it negative reinforcement with a cherry on top. Doing it one way, but adding the positive reinforcement in. I think it's more effective to teach it through the positive reinforcement, the origin of the behavior, but it's okay. A lot of horses have really improved and been okay with that. Some horses it's a little conflicting, I think. So you just, everybody's got their journey, and let them be on their journey, and just be there to educate, support where necessary, and not feeling like it's your job to change and convert everybody, because it's not.
Okay, well that's it.
Thank you.
For doing it. And
Yes.
Thank you everybody for watching,
Yeah.
caring, and loving us, and supporting us, because we need it. Lord knows we need it.
Well, thanks, you guys. Thanks, Jessie.
Yeah.